Good Sunday morning to you. It is Sunday, October 14th, 2018, and we have a couple of stories today. We're not going to do a lot of stories, but we're going to look at another theme-like collection of stories. It kind of follows on from yesterday in some way. We're going to look at the deaf and disabled in the wake of Hurricane Michael. We're going to look at Honduras fleeing to the U.S., Honduran citizens. And we are going to look at a political commentator and educator named Camille Paglia, and she's commenting on what Feminism 2.0 is doing to society. And I'm just going to put this caveat in right at the beginning. If you have strong opinions about feminism in general, if you are easily enraged by some of the opinions and viewpoints that women have about what is happening to their society around them, then you just might want to skip the last story and you might want to skip my commentary. It's not my intention to offend or enrage anyone with the stories I choose and how I fit them into this broadcast. So I will again give you a warning before that clip, but let's get off the desk right away and go look at the news. Warning comes from Reuters.com, and the title is "Without Captions, Warnings About Hurricane Michael Failed to Reach the Disabled." And this was published yesterday at 6:16 yesterday morning. Reuters. Oh, and it's by Gabriella Border and Barbara Goldberg. Excuse me. Reuters. When Oscar-winning deaf actress Marlee Maitlan turned to the internet to view a video warning about Hurricane Michael, she was quickly reminded that sign language interpreters are often edited out of broadcast clips and closed captioning seems to be non-existent online. This is a file photo from captioned, "Search and rescue crews walk past debris caused by Hurricane Michael in Mexico Beach, Florida, U.S., October 11th, 2018. Reuters via Jonathan Bachman, and this is from File Photos, their photo pool for news. Quote, "There are 35 million deaf and hard of hearing people, and it's amazing today that there isn't full access to them," close quote, she told Reuters through an interpreter on Friday in a telephone interview. This is Marlee Maitlan, very well-known deaf actress. Maitlan drew attention to emergency communication glitches with disabled people earlier in the week when she tweeted on Tuesday about the Weather Channel's failure to include closed captioning in reporting about the approaching storm. And this is the text of her tweet. "Dear at Weather Channel, I wanted to share this video for the thousands of deaf and hard of hearing residents in the path of #Hurricane Michael, but unfortunately it's not closed captioned. Access to info is vital. It's a life or death matter. Thank you," close quote, Maitlan wrote. Interesting. The Weather Channel did not respond on Twitter and was not available for comment. We have another file photo. Members Search and Rescue are seen next to property damage by Hurricane Michael in Mexico Beach, Florida, U.S., October 11th. And this is, again, Reuters photo pool for Jonathan Bachman for Reuters photo pool. Emergency notifications about troubles ranging from life-threatening tornadoes to New York City subway delays fail to reach Americans with hearing loss because of the failure to integrate closed captioning on public address systems, she noted. This is Marlee Maitlan making this observation. Quote, there is not so many of you, so it's not important for us. That's the way they feel, close quote, Maitlan said. Quote, everything is migrating to the internet. It's breaking news, and you bring up the website video, and it's just the clips. There is no captioning, close quote. Even when officials include signers at their news conferences, viewers trying to catch up on the news online later are unable to see them in the edited video clips, she said. Quote, when they show the mayor or the sheriff, there's always an interpreter next to them. But they show a clip and then it goes away, close quote, Maitlan said. Warning and evacuating people with physical limitations from a fast-moving hurricane requires extraordinary efforts, advocates and state officials said on Friday. Many disabled people are low income and rely on public transportation and cannot afford private transport or temporary lodging. Those with physical limitations have difficulty with storm preparations like boarding up homes and storing water bottles. The more time they have to prepare for a storm, the better. But Hurricane Michael's rapid intensification left thousands with no escape. Oh, and this image, this is Marlee Maitlan, the woman, and then she has a younger, maybe teenager, interpreting for her. In other words, she is delivering information or commentary. This is a file photo. Let's see what the other image is. But the young lady is the hearing lady is actually the interpreter, which is the reverse of what Maitlan is talking about. And this is a file photo. Actress Marlee Maitlan, she's a Republican, performs the national anthem with a sign language as Eve DeVoe sings it before the MLB American League baseball game between Texas Rangers and Los Angeles in Anaheim, California, U.S., July 22nd, 2012, and that's a Reuters picture, file photo picture by Danny Malashuk. Sorry, Danny. Excuse me. All right, so we're going to go back to the article. So that's the reverse of what Marlee Maitlan is talking about. She was actually the featured singer, if you will. But she sung in a foreign language, if you will. She sung in sign. And she had this young lady, whose name I've already forgotten, interpreting for sign. In other words, interpreting for hearing people. All right, we're not going to continue on this story. You get the point that even with all this whiz-bang technology, where we should be, as a matter of course, making accommodations for people who are differently abled than us, we're not. And this is a life and death matter. Another just interesting point, I want to scroll back. I want you to look at this house. This is a comfortable middle class house, what's left of it. That one we can't tell. We'll scroll up to a previous article. That's a boat. Can't tell on that one. Look at this house. This is Panama City. Now, remember the reports ahead of, in the 48 hours ahead of Michael making landfall and tearing up the Florida coast in the Panhandle region, and then moving on, doing some damage in Alabama, which we haven't heard of at all. And honestly, I haven't gone and looked for, but also it moved on into Georgia, and there were all these this uproar and concern about the Carolinas, rightfully so. During that time of the 48 hours reporting on this storm, everybody kept saying, oh, there's lots of poor people down there. Oh, they all live in trailers and mobile homes and small manufactured homes. You know, that community is going to be at risk. But the file footage we see is of very comfortable middle-class homes being destroyed. I have yet to see one photo from any trailer park or mobile home community or manufactured home, small manufactured home community. Not one. Something to think about. Anyway, let's move on. All right, our next story comes from the Gateway. In fact, our next two stories come from the Gateway Pundit. And this is breaking news by Jim Holt of Gateway Pundit, October 13th, so this is yesterday. Breaking: massive bloody street brawl in Portland. Antifa leftists, Proud Boys, Patriot prayer protesters battle in the street. And then there's a parenthetical note, wild video. This is becoming an issue, at least in some places. And this is an image. It does not give a file footage or a credit, so I'm going to speculate that this is from an independent journalist. Maybe Mike Holt was the journalist. I don't know, because it doesn't say. All right, the article tells us there was a massive street brawl in Portland, Oregon, Saturday night. Police were called to break up the fighting that spread from the sidewalk into the street. Right-wingers and Antifa leftists brawled outside of Kelly's Olympian. Presumably that's a restaurant. This was way worse than the New York City fights last night. So apparently on Friday night there were the same type of activity in New York City. Proud Boys and Patriot prayer members and Antifa had a huge wild fight. Hundreds of people were out in the street, and this is via Mike Cernovich. The video is insane, and this is his tweet that he, I guess, is retweeting Mike Bivens. And I know that Mike Bivens is an independent journalist. And the text reads, breaking first confrontation, Antifa pepper sprayed Proud Boys and Patriot prayer members after some posturing between the two groups. And under fair use, Title 17, 107, we are playing the clip. With the caveat that anybody whose work gets featured by Halieus Media is getting free publicity. Let's watch what happened. Oh, this happens every time. There we go.
Back up the mill!
right, I'm sorry for that. Embedded videos are troublesome when you're capturing, and if you don't start them just right, they go sideways. And I just want to point out, I know it was probably hard to see because of my screw up there. Basically, no point in saying it otherwise. The pepper spray cans that allegedly Antifa were spraying at Proud Boys and Patriot prayer members were industrial size. I mean, I haven't even seen the police use cans this size. They appeared to me to be the size of the cans that go into propane stoves. They're a little shorter than and a little wider than a spray paint can, and they had handles, spray handles attached to them, and the purpose, like paint spray handles, the purpose for that is so that the person deploying the pepper spray does not accidentally shoot themselves in the face. Because if you've ever operated a spray can with just a little white button, if you're not completely sure that you have the button pointing where you want the material to go, you could get it all over yourself. And that is a big problem for those who deploy pepper spray in this size canister. The little small ones that were meant for self-defense purposes have a safety feature. Sorry about that. Have a safety feature the way the cap is made, so that you can only spray it away from you. But let's move on. Again, from Mike Bivens, huge brawl just happened, and police came in to fire. I don't know what Mike is trying to get at here. Firenless lethal rounds. Let me read this again. Huge brawl just happened, and police came in to fire less lethal rounds on people. Right-wingers were clubbing people with clubs outside of Kelly's Olympian. Way worse than New York City last night. Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer and Antifa just had a huge... Okay, so he's telling us basically the same thing. Title 17, 107.
In about 2 minutes, Riot Squad's gonna be here.
Now, I want to point out a couple of things. It appears that Mike Bivens and whoever his crew member was, we could hear them starting to struggle breathing, and that's because the way pepper spray is deployed in these type of canisters, it's meant to spread far and wide very quickly. and Mike and his, we'll call this person a production assistant for lack of a better term. That is the correct term, really. They were above the crowd. They had a pretty good view above the crowd. Maybe they were on like a light pole or something, not sure, because we didn't see from their perspective where they were positioned, but they did position themselves in order to get coverage, wide coverage. It's very hard to cover this kind of action, for lack of a better term, because it's spread out and you constantly panning the camera back and forth. It's very, you end up defeating the purpose of filming it because it's very difficult to follow. Let's move on. So my point is they were overcome. And then the article, the few words in the article from Gateway Pundit says people were stomped. We've already seen that. Again, the same text from Mike Bivens. Title 17, Section 107.
In about 2 minutes, Riot Squad's gonna be here.
Mike Bivens continues to report, Mike Bivens continues to report Tiny started pummeling a dude, and then more ran up to stomp him out. Portland police in riot gear then ran up. Well, we've seen the same clip twice. Yeah, okay. So, presuming this is the guy who got stomped out, his face is a bloody mess, as people follow, urging him to leave, right-wingers calling on their comrades to leave him alone. And because, okay, here we go. It's not a video, that's why when I clicked it. I assumed it was a video since everything else was. What I would like to do, and I'm not going to do because it's pulling video from YouTube is so problematic, is I would like to show you in slow motion what actually happened, what the tactics of Antifa are. You might have already noticed it. But here is an image of Portland police, and this is a SWAT team. The way this SUV is kitted, you have a standing running board that runs just from behind the driver's door so the driver can get out if necessary. And this is a standing running board. These guys roll up in Portland. Here you can see a grip bar, which normally on a normal car would be, a luggage rack of some kind. But this is actually a grip bar, so these guys can hold on to this, and when they roll up, stand on the standing running board, and still deploy their weapons without leaving the running board if necessary. But usually what happens is, as in this case, the vehicle stops, and then these guys will deploy as they're trained. We have a YouTube video, and I'm going to pause for a moment and see if I can stop action or slow-mo this for you, because there's a couple of key things I want to point out. What you're going to see next is a few seconds of some protesters before the madness broke out. There already are some contentions between the protesters, and then after that you're going to see a slow motion and stop action clip that is only, I want to say, 5 to 7 seconds long in real time, but I have put markers in where I want to show you some things and explain some tactics. So let's go view that right now, and I'm going to voice over the slow-mo part of the clip.
And what he's doing, telling the cops to stand down and letting these masked ninjas run the streets of Portland, it is sad. It is sad. It doesn't matter if it's right wing or left wing that's blocking the road. Get the hell out of the road. Let the people pass. You can take one. Anyone who's courageous enough to walk across with me with a flower, okay, or a candle, please come over here, okay?
I've frozen this frame for a minute to give you a heads up. I want you to pay attention to yellow markers and where I zoom in and zoom out, and I will do my best to do color commentary on this very fast action. Watch the fade. Alright, so the first clip we see, these are Antifa, black ninja type, outfits, black coverings on their face. Not everybody in all black is Antifa, but these are Antifa. Watch this guy's actions, and we get a beneficial camera flash right here. Those are Antifa. Next up, we're going to see the same tactic, but in a slightly different setting. We have again a confrontation between either Proud Boys or Patriot Prayer and Antifa. Stuff is being thrown. Watch the arrow. You see the spray before you see the hand, because this is so fast. So keep watching and keep looking for the arrows. We're going to swing around. This is a ground view of the same clip we've seen twice already. The pepper spray is meant to disperse, and I'm going to call these guys the exterminators. That's their role in these skirmishes. Because when you see these skirmishes, it's orchestrated. Watch, watch, watch. Right there. And we're going to zoom in with a beneficial camera flash by somebody. That is the same guy that we just saw. He is not in Antifa garb. And so let's move on, and we will watch again. Camera is going to swing around away from this skirmish that was broken up with pepper spray. And the police that we saw on the SUV are now deploying. They are trying to move the crowd apart and create a perimeter between Antifa and the other groups, but it's not always immediately successful. It is my opinion this is the same guy. All right, so what am I telling you here? In some ways, this resembles street fighting or gang fighting from 40-ish years ago, 50 years ago, actually. Usually, fights over street territory in major metropolitan cities. But the resemblance stops there, because in those conflicts, much of the time you took, you and your crew or your gang took your beating and went home and lived to fight another day, to put it crudely. That's where these tactics depart from that sort of old school way of, I don't know, the honorable conflict. I don't know. But this is not that. This is an evolved version of that. This is combat tactics. Remember when I said I'm going to call these guys, there was one Antifa in the beginning, and the same guy featured 2 or 3 times in the middle and at the end of the clip, 2 times. I called them the exterminators, because what their role is to let a skirmish go long enough for some shots to get in, and then they are to go in and stop the conflict by spraying the opposition and getting them to turn and go the other way. These are, I don't want to say they're staged conflicts, but they definitely have some common themes about them. And this is very dangerous. This type of conflict, if it keeps spreading, will have some consequences that I don't think any of us sitting on the sidelines going, what the heck is going on here, want to have, including National Guard on the street. You saw yesterday, if you watched yesterday's broadcast, what happened at Kent State when National Guard was deployed, and they were much less trained in how to handle crowds. 4 people died. Students all in good standing. They were all excellent students. I don't think we're going to get off so lightly, if I can use that turn of phrase, if this doesn't stop. Our next story, again from Gateway Pundit. Let me pull up down the scroll bar on Notepad. Okay, our little sticky note is up to date. Not again, says the headline from Gateway Pundit. Hundreds of Hondurans fleeing poverty are marching through Mexico to U.S. border. And this was again by Jim Hoft, October 13th, 2018, so that would have been yesterday, and the headline reads, 1,000 Hondurans are marching through Mexico to the U.S. border right in time for November election. And here we have a file footage by RT, and it's via Reporto de Si America. I don't speak Spanish either. And there are little children, there are adults, so these appear to be families. But look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 men visible, with 1, 2, presumably 3 women visible in this picture. So if this is a random, accurate sampling of this crowd, it's about a 3-to-1 margin. of men versus women of adult age. Now, if you add the children, then maybe that margin slips a little bit, and maybe it's more like 4 or 5 to 1, I would think, maybe. But nevertheless, the point I'm making is there are an awful lot in this random picture, an awful lot of young men. All right, hashtag HN. Well, it's in Spanish. I'm not even going to try. But James Woods weighs in. Another dog and pony show just in time for hashtag midterms. Any bets on how many will hear, quote, babies ripped from their mother's arms, close quote, for the next 3 weeks? Hashtag Soros con job. And this is via, he's retweeting Fox coverage. And the caption reads from Fox News, hundreds of Hondurans headed for U.S. border in mass migration. Fox News reported hundreds of Honduran migrants are headed for the United States border just days after Vice President Pence sat down with the Central American country's leader, urging him to take a tougher stance on mass migrations. At least 1,300 people, including young children, left San Pedro Sula in northern Honduras on Saturday. So that would have been yesterday. In what some are calling the, quote, March of the Migrant, close quote, Reuters reported. Bartolo Fuentes, the organizer, told the news agency that the group plans to march through Guatemala into Mexico. From there, participants will request a refugee status, which would allow them to stay in the country, or they will apply for a visa to pass through into the United States. And then Golf and Gary tweets out on August 3rd, 2018, is August, not October. Is this the height of hypocrisy or what? Nancy Pelosi, who pretends to advocate for the poor and homeless, lives in this outrageous mansion. Yes, it is. Nate is, whatever. At Nate is, figure it out for yourself. The 1,000 plus illegal immigrants marching to our borders right now from Honduras. Bartolo Fuentes is the organizer. Remember that name. Who is the financial backer? It will backfire on the Dems, and that was yesterday. So, Radio America, HN provided a clip, and the tweet reads, Bartolo Fuentes, coordinator of La Caravana Habla con Radio American sobre... Okay, you know.
Pero aunado a la inseguridad, a la violencia, es decir, aquí hay gente trabajadora que hay, emprendedores, pero que cuando han empezado con su negocito a levantarse, le cae la extorsión o los asaltan. Y bueno, hasta ahí llegó, ¿verdad? Su avance, su levantón terminó hasta cuando le empezaron a pedir la renta, o lo amenazan, o le amenazan a sus hijos. Entonces, de nada sirve que tengan buenas iniciativas y que le pongan esfuerzo al trabajo, si después todo ese esfuerzo no va a ser para disfrute de su familia, sino para otro que viene y lo obliga por la violencia.
All right, I apologize for the quality of the sound. Nothing I can do about it. If you speak Spanish, you know what he said. But what I would like to point out is this is not a poor, bedraggled economic refugee. This is a man who is dressed in a button-down shirt. He's wearing a earpiece and mic, presumably attached to his phone, and the Soros connection alleged might be accurate. Let's move on to our last story, and let's see if you can tease out the connections here. And for those of you, I promised a warning earlier in the intro, and so this is your warning. If you have issues with this, just skip it. All right, moving on. This is from Breitbart, and this is Camille Paglia, feminism based on destroying men is, quote, absolute poison, close quote, to culture. And this is Camille Paglia. She is she says that she is a classic feminist, and she'll explain why. I would like to say that the beginning of this clip, she's speaking in a measured voice, but she gets a little amped up, and when she gets amped up, she is a little difficult to understand, so you really have to pay close attention to what she's saying. But I think what she's saying is has merit. So let's listen to the clip. This is by Dr. Susan Berry for Breitbart, and it was also published on October 13th, 2018, so that would have been yesterday. Cultural commentator Camille Paglia said in a recently published video that a second wave feminism, in its attempt to destroy men, is also destroying women and our culture. A video of Paglia's discussion at the Battle of Ideas Festival in London in October 2016 has been made available, and YouTube was recently linked to on the Drudge Report. The video is released with the launch of Paglia's new book, Provocations, Collected Essays. And basically, I'm not going to read this because I am going to play the clip. Title 17, Section 107, and let's hear what Ms. Paglia has to say about Feminism 2.0.
But through your research project into Amelia Earhart in the early 1960s, I learned about that wonderful period following the women gaining the right to vote in both Britain and the United States, and these women like Katharine Hepburn, Dorothy.
Well, I'm having a tough time with clips today. So let's go. I have it queued up here. Let's go to YouTube and see if we can get it directly a lot better.
I thought this was supposed to be about the liberation of women. Instead, I really hit a wall of the closed minds, the kind of the new fanatics of second wave feminism. I had already signaled my revolt by my passion for Amelia Earhart, when I was in high school in the early 1960s. Through Amelia Earhart, who I learned about through some newspaper article, they found some bones, which turned out not to be hers after all, the eternal mystery of what happened to Amelia Earhart. But through your research project into Amelia Earhart in the early 1960s, I learned about that wonderful period following the women gaining the right to vote in both Britain and the United States, and these women like Katharine Hepburn, Dorothy Parker, Dorothy Thompson, Margaret Burke White. There were like just so many, and Anne Morrow Lindbergh. There were so many women who were achieving and who attained a tremendous celebrity in the period of the 1920s, 1930s. That to me is my favorite period in feminism, okay? Because these women, okay, admired what men had done. Okay? There was no male bashing, as became systemic, okay, to second wave feminism. Okay, it's an absolute poison that has spread worldwide. Okay, a feminism based on denigrating men, trivializing what men have done, defining men as oppressors and tyrants through history. Okay, it is an absolute lie. I mean, there have been crimes against women where they have occurred. We must condemn them. Right, but men throughout history have given their lives, okay, and their labor for the support of women and children. Okay, so this is an element in second wave feminism that to me is an extrapolation of neuroticism on the part of these fanatics, okay, who have been attracted to this movement. And I've been at war. Or Amelia Earhart admired what Lindbergh had done, and she was called Lady Lindbergh when she crossed the Atlantic, heroically alone, okay, in an airplane. You couldn't even see it out the windshield. She was like doing everything, by mechanically, etc. Right. So I feel that was the most helpful period in terms of the history of feminism.
So the generation snowflake phenomena of the thin-skinned, easily offended.
Yes.
And I find it. That's what I was saying. I find it upsetting because I, like you, think. Isn't the point about women's liberation to be free and strong,
yes,
to take risks, rather than I can't cope with that. If I see a picture, or it's going to finish me off, and who can protect me? And the demand is to, for example, in universities, college authorities, you come and protect me.
Yes.
Well,
it's a return to the 1950s
so,
vision of femininity again. Okay?
Yeah.
So when my generation arrived in college, I arrived in 1964 in college, and the colleges still believed they had the right and obligation to act in loco parentis, in place of the parent. Therefore, the women dormitories, women were compelled to sign in at 11 o'clock at night, so we were safely inside. The men could run free, for the whole night. We're the ones who said, get out of our private lives. And the colleges said, no, the world is dangerous. We must protect you against rape. And what my generation said was, give us the freedom to risk rape. That is true adulthood, okay, for women. And now everything has regressed. And I do believe it's because nothing has really happened, okay, to this generation. They have not had that initial experience that my generation did of war, and there's so that I think it's a result of the world of social media also, where people feel they have so many friends, okay, and they want a sense that reality is comforting them and cushioning them and so on. I think there's a great anxiety and a sort of weakness of outline of the personalities of young people. They do, to me, look like as an experienced classroom teacher of 45 years. I mean, I'm starting to feel, I'm starting to self-censor as I speak to them. I'm starting to, it's not that I give trigger warnings or anything like that, but I do feel that they are easily upset, okay, and that their education has been without a realistic introduction to the barbarities of human history. Right? I feel that ancient history must be taught, okay, and that there's too much presentism right now. Right? They see a comfortable world around them, the world of the shopping malls, a world of material prosperity, right? And they believe that by any problems in the environment can be remedied by just a little, using a screwdriver, slightly tighten a screw, all right, and soon utopia, will happen. They have no sense, okay, of the special privileges they enjoy in this very affluent, culture. So I believe in introducing young people to the disasters of history.
But just actually on teaching, because I think that's the disasters of, that's a good curriculum. But they've just announced that they're getting rid of classical civilization A-level in this country. So that's worth knowing.
Well, when second wave feminism suddenly burst out in the late 1960s and early 1970s, there was this claim being made by feminists that the history had been censored and that soon would be rediscovered all these unknown female geniuses in the history of the arts, and there really was that belief out there. So there was like this search for the undiscovered woman Michelangelo and so on and so forth. Well, there is no woman Michelangelo. Instead, they'll add Artemisia Gentileschi, who's a perfectly capable, competent painter in a certain Baroque style that Rubens did better, etc. So my book, Sexual Persona, my first book, is about what is the nature of artistic creation, and what is the nature of genius. And I said that men have indeed made most of the major landmarks in the history of the arts, and I tried to explain why. I said it's not because women have less talent, but that men are driven toward hallucination, obsession, diversion, from the priority of women's power over them. I have all my theories about men's conceptualization that may indeed be related to the intelligence range. That is that women tend to show up at the great midpoint of the IQ range. And you have male geniuses and you have male morons, literally. And I also said that to me, crime. That crime is a conceptual activity, serial sex crime, and so on. And that this is and I said there is no female Mozart because there is no female Jack the Ripper. You just do not find women showing up as serial murderers. So I think that the ideation is one of the products of the male mind. And I've seen many.
All right, let's go back to the desk and have a little chat. Okay, what have we seen today? We have seen several stories that have a thread. And they are, in some ways, a continuation from yesterday. If you think that I plan this way and look for clips that fit a narrative, I don't. I honestly don't. But there is clearly a theme. Yesterday we looked at behavior, consequences, and responsibility. And we looked at primarily women's behavior. Today we looked at men's behavior in the spotlight, where we saw Proud Boys, Patriot, Prayer, and Antifa going at each other. We also saw Marlee Maitlan, a deaf actress, stand up and say, hey, that closed captioning thing, well, it didn't work. And in a rapidly developing storm situation as the Hurricane Michael was, the disabled and the deaf were they didn't even get an adequate warning system. And I totally agree with her. The ability to manipulate your computer so that you can see better is built right in. And you could go to settings, accessibility, and manipulate what you see so that you can see better. That's not the case for deaf people. There is not, other than volume control, there is not a way to mitigate that easily. And in this age of whiz-bang technology, I cannot for the life of me understand why we haven't addressed that. Closed captioning can be for American English, and that is the only language I have experience with this issue. It can be horrible. Because if you do not enunciate, or if you use slang, or if you mumble, or don't speak clearly into the microphone, then what comes up on the screen, which is auto-generated, it can be wildly different than what you're actually saying. It makes no sense whatsoever until it picks up your voice again. This is in this age of like I said, of whiz-bang technology. This is just not acceptable. So then we also looked at the second wave of migrants from Central America. We noted that there was what appeared to be in the sample shot a large contingent of young men. And I want to tie that into the massive problem with MS-13. They are truly a gang. And when we looked at the Antifa tactics, we saw something that resembled what we believe the gangs of the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, what their operation was and what their methodology was. But when we looked at Antifa, we saw an escalation and a change in tactics. It went from the, honorable skirmish, territorial skirmish, where you had your territory, your opposition had their territory, and any encroachments ended up in a fight. You took your beating and you went home to fight another day. That's what we're led to believe. But this conflict between these groups is not that. It has escalated into combat tactics. I highlighted the use of what I called the exterminators. They come in, they allow an individual skirmish to get just so far, and then they come in and pepper spray the opposition just enough to get them to back off so that the overall battle can continue. That's a battle tactic. That's not street fighting. You're not taking your beating and going home to fight another day. That's a combat battle tactic. And then the last story we saw was with Camille Paglia talking about the influence of the rise and influence of Feminism 2.0. And she made some very interesting points about how the feminists who campaigned for and acquired the vote for women, and at the turn of the last century, and then going forward, their pursuits, they never bashed men. They admired men and wanted to try their hand at their own version of similar accomplishments. And she goes on to talk about the art world and how there is no female Mozart because there is no female Jack the Ripper or mass murderess. Now, yes, there are exceptions. You can all wave your Lizzie Borden placards at me. Yes, she was an exception. So, what's the thread I'm trying to point out here? That if we don't step back, pull back, and examine our own behavior, our own attitudes about the opposite sex, about the opposition political parties, and come to some satisfying agreement for both sides, we are going to destroy our society completely. It won't matter what happens during midterm elections, because these, for example, these trumped up accusations of sexual assault 30 years later with no exculpatory evidence, or these skirmishes between men primarily are going to cause the government to say, we have a problem, we have to fix it for the good of all, and they're going to impose solutions that not all of us are going to be happy. In fact, none of us will be happy with. I want to talk. Camille Paglia's interviewer talked about, presumably in the UK, I'm assuming that was in the UK, the abolition of classical studies. And they jokingly referred to, educating people on the disasters of history. And I totally agree. If you don't understand the barbarity and the disasters of history, you have no context with which to understand or prevent the same thing from happening again. And we're watching it happen right before our eyes. A further point I'd like to make about that is something that James Woods brought up when he used the hashtag Soros funding. These clashes between civilizations, and on the micro level, these clashes between Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer versus Antifa are no different, in my opinion, than the gladiators of Roman culture. So you're familiar with gladiators. They were, for the most part, slaves. These were people who were, spoils of war, or sometimes, in many cases, criminals from the Roman Empire. They were rounded up. They were kept imprisoned by, I forgot what the official title is, but it was a man. It was always a man who was like the slave master, and they were put the best. The most rebellious, the most physically capable were thrown into the Colosseum for the amusement and entertainment of the nobility. It's a blood sport, and we're seeing it develop again. Only this time, in certain areas, like Portland, among others, we're seeing this order to stand down to the police department from, the mayor, the police chief, the governor, whoever, gives the order. And it trickles down from top to bottom. We're seeing the development of the same blood sport mentality. And I have to ask myself, who is sitting back in their, easy chair with their bunny slippers on, watching these conflicts develop and deriving some sort of entertainment or satisfaction from it? To me, it looks no different than the blood sport of Colosseum fighting. Now, having been an anthropology major and a historian, an amateur historian, I've studied a little bit about this. And it's my opinion that without productive, focused activity, men will find something to fight about. And other men in power with little or no scruples and a whole lot of greed will pay them to do it, or at least pave the way for these kinds of conflicts to build up and continue. It seems to me that that was the genesis for and the development of sports, that it gave men an outlet, young men, mature adult men. It gave them an outlet for this kind of angst that seems to come with the male biological makeup. We are different. Men are different. Women biologically are predispositioned to bear children and to care for and nurture them as a result of, a committed partnership. And for the last, we only want to say for the last 50 years that women have been abandoned by the men who fathered their children, but that's not true. That is just not true. We only talk about it because it's politically expedient, and it is a tool of this Feminism 2.0. So back to the conflicts and sports thing. So it seems to me that we're no longer satisfied as a society with sportsmanship and play hard, win hard, lose graciously, good sportsmanship when you win, and that kind of thing. We have taken all of that out of this, what was a healthy social development for countries who were striving to be at peace with each other. And we have replaced that with everybody gets a trophy, everybody participates, nobody's better than anybody else or more valuable in their role than anybody else. The bench warmer is just as good as the all-star hitter. And that's just not reality. It's just not reality. Yes, the all-star hitter should be gracious to the bench warmer and not, ridicule him or her or whatever. But accolades are accolades. When you do well, you should be recognized for it. Your effort should be recognized. And I think that if, like I said before, if we don't pull back, we are in a world of hurt. We are going to lose the stability and peace such that it has been of this society. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that if we want to continue to enjoy peace and material prosperity in this country, we need to step back, take a hard look, make personal adjustments on an individual level. What do we value most? Is it material things, or is it our relationships with other people and the ability to be civil and polite when we disagree, and the ability to negotiate a compromise that benefits as many people as possible, including the disabled, the unstable, the addicted, the financially disadvantaged or poor. We have to refocus our commitment to each other in this country, and we have to keep out people who want to destroy what we've built over time. Those people don't belong here because they don't espouse our values. Pretty heavy stuff for a Sunday morning, and if I've been a Debbie Downer, I'm sorry. But I really believe that I need to speak out on this in hopes that somebody hears me and says, she's making a point that I should consider. So with that, on this not rainy day, a little bit hazy and definitely chilly. Oh, before I say goodbye, I wanted to add one parenthetical note. So from almost the time I got up this morning, and the Antifa clip took a lot of editing, there has been this weird chemical smell the whole time. it's this citrusy smell that smells like really cheap oven cleaner. If somebody got up and cleaned their oven at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, good for you. But this smell has not dissipated, and it was making it very difficult for me to concentrate on editing and get the Antifa clip slowed down and the markers put in and what have you. So just a weird thing that happened, and my windows are wide open and it still hasn't dissipated. So at any rate, for me and the shepherd, I hope you have a wonderful Sunday. I hope you and your family are blessed. If you are in the aftermath of the weather events, both the hurricane and the snow, and you have to make critical life-changing decisions, my prayer for you is that you seek God's guidance for how and when and where you rebuild. Should you stay where you are? Do you have reason to stay where you are? And I hope that you take the cautions and the warnings about preparation seriously, and make preparation to be able to be evacuated safely if you need to have emergency supplies if you have to stay in place, and that you reach out to churches or community organizations to try and find somebody who will help you if you need it. I certainly have had my eye-opening experience this year with just 2 or 3 days of no power. And I assure you, I have taken basic steps to make sure I have light and a cooking source. And with that, for me and the shepherd, I hope you are blessed. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.